Representative Mr. Masimba Taferenyika, and the CEO of Freedom Park, Jane Mufamadi, ambassadors, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tembisa Fakude. I am charged with the responsibility of facilitating this very important function, which is the International Day of Solidarity with the people of Palestine, whom we all love, and that's why we're here. So without any further ado, we're going to shoot straight into our program, and we'll request all of us to stand while the national anthems of both State of Palestine and South Africa are being rendered. Very good. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Sabah khair, Assalamu alaikum, Sanibonani, Dumelang, Khemore, and good morning. It's so appropriate that those two national anthems can play together because it's the significance of having both of these national anthems, given our relationship and appreciation of each other's struggles. For me, it's just an appropriate thing to be done. I'd like to call upon Ms. Mufamadi to come and give us the word of welcome. Ms. Mufamadi is the CEO of Freedom Park, the place that's hosting us today.
Your Excellency, Minister Naledi Pandor, Minister of International Relations and Cooperation in South Africa, and your family, Mr. Pandor and Ms. Pandor, Your Excellency, Ms. Hanan Jara, Ambassador of Palestine in South Africa, the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps in South Africa, Mr. Masimba Tiferenyika, the UN representative, Mr. Mpotsedu, Council Member of Freedom Park, Your Excellencies, High Commissioners, members of the Diplomatic Corps, our veterans of the liberation struggle, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm honored to stand in front of you today to welcome you to Freedom Park and also to this significant occasion, marking the UN International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian People. The Freedom Park was conceptualized to preserve and to celebrate our liberation heritage by honoring those who died, those who sacrificed for freedom and humanity. And our vision is to become an international icon of humanity and freedom. And within the liberation struggle epoch, where we honor those who participated, we highlight the 4 pillars of the liberation struggle. We highlight mass mobilization, underground struggle, armed struggle, and international solidarity. These are the pillars within which our struggle was waged through. And we realize and acknowledge also that had it not been because of the international support during our hour of need, we probably would not have been free today. And therefore, as we pay homage to all South Africans and Africans who came through us, we also pay homage to the international community for their support. And we also understand the issue of international solidarity from a broader concept and perspective that includes aspects of sustainability, in international relations, especially the peaceful coexistence of all members of the international community, where we look at issues of equal partnerships and equitable sharing and of benefits, burdens, and also refraining from harming each other. It is common cause that our South African history of colonialism and apartheid, as well as our national and international struggle for freedom and humanity, have parallels with the Palestinian liberation struggles against occupation, discrimination, and human rights abuses. And therefore, our relations are grounded on a common purpose to remove the yoke of oppression. As our South Africa's first democratically elected president and our international icon of humanity, President Mandela, said, we know too well that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinians. As I close the quote, we also remember the relations that South Africa's liberation movements had during the dark days of apartheid, and also what the people of Palestine did in supporting us. And Your Excellency, in welcoming you all, I just want to inform you that the Names Verification Committee, which is a committee that recommends to Freedom Park the names that should be inscribed and honored here in our walls, have just also recommended for the approval by our council the name of Comrade Yasser Arafat to be considered and honored within our wall of names, and therefore solidifying the eternal brotherhood and sisterhood of our relations. You are all welcome. I thank you.
Thank you very much, CEO. You know, all the presidents of South Africa had one thing in common, which trickled down to us, the citizens of this country. And that is the love and appreciation of the struggle of the Palestinian people. Some of us have had a chance to spend time in that part of the world. And we've come back in order to explain to our people, fall into the trap of trying to all the time compare what's happening in Palestine to what happened in South Africa. And I've argued so many times that I grew up in Soweto. I lived in the Middle East. I've spent enough time in Palestine, 48, Palestine, 67, and everything in between. And I tell people that, you know, in Soweto, we never had F-16s bombing us, you know, and all the barbarism that we continue seeing happening in Palestine. So the argument I've put forward over the past couple of years is that Palestine is worse than what happened in South Africa. The oppression of the Palestinian people can never be compared to, yes, we had an evil system in this country which was condemned by world over, but the evil that we continue to see in that small piece of land is worse than what we went through as young people in Soweto and other townships of South Africa. I spent time in a place called Bethlehem in the Haisha camp. I was with a good friend of mine, Mr. Naim Jina, and we saw women using sewage water to make milk for their kids. We didn't have that in Soweto. We saw kids who've never seen a tree because they are surrounded by these walls, concrete walls. And then in 2001, when South Africa had that famous conference, we had a chance of hosting the Palestinian delegations in South Africa. They were crying when they went to Durban to see the ocean for the first time. Now, how can you talk about South Africa? It's okay, I mean, it makes sense, and I think it brings down the understanding. But what the people of Palestine are going through is worse than what we went through in South Africa. So the struggle continues to liberate that land from the river to the sea. And it's therefore imperative on all of us to continue raising this flag and pushing for the liberation of the people of Palestine. It's incumbent. It's not a part-time job, this struggle. It's a struggle that all of us must appreciate and embrace. And I'm glad that you had in our political leadership and government a woman of such bravery like Ms. Naledi Pandor, who continually speaks truth to power, even at places where you'll expect that there will be niceties. But Ms. Naledi Pandor has made us all proud, and I think she deserves a round of applause. So, on a much softer note, we will then welcome a cultural performance. I'm not quite sure whether they are ready. If they are, there will be cultural performance and poetry before we move on with our program.
We are here to stand His Royal Highness Mr. Palestinian People. We made a song with him about the legendary late. Are here to render that song in his honor. So we are not in a funeral. You can stand and dance with us and enjoy. Thank you.
Friends, comrades and adversaries, will allow me to speak from my heart and pay tribute to the Lion of Jerusalem, Comrade Yasser Arafat, Commander in Chief of the Palestinian Liberation. We remember you for your bravery. We remember you for your bravery. We remember you for your heroism. With blood and sweat, keeps the flame of freedom burning. Live the spirit of Yasser Arafat. Long live. Viva Yasser Arafat, viva. Siyamkhumbula uYasser Arafat kokheli abantu kwelasePalestina. Siyamkhumbula uYasser Arafat kokheli abantu kwelasePalestina. We remember you, world of faith, for your strength and love for your people. We remember you, brother. Your blood and sweat keeps the flame of freedom burning. Free Palestine, free Palestine, free Palestine. Let the peace in gospel. Free Palestine, free Palestine, free Palestine. Let the peace in Gaza. Sure. Sure. Yasser, Yasser Arafat, free Palestine, free Palestine, free Palestine. Let there peace in West Bank. Free Palestine, yes Palestine, yes Palestine. Let there peace in Gaza. Sure. If Palestine, if Palestine, if Palestine, oh, if Palestine, free Palestine, I believe freedom for your strength and love for your people. We will forever remember you. Your love and sweat keeps the flame of freedom burning. Free Palestine, free Palestine. Oh, let the peace in. Free Palestine, free Palestine, free Palestine. Oh, let the peace in. Free Palestine. Sure. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Our Father, free Palestine, free Palestine. Oh, let the free Palestine, free Palestine, free Palestine. Say free Palestine, free Palestine, free Palestine. Oh, let the peace in heaven. Free Palestine. Thank you.
Such an entertaining and inspirational performance. Thank you. I always want to come here because it reminds me of the freedom that we got for some of us and that we take for granted. My main profile photo on my Twitter account is the photo of this scenery of Freedom Park. It's something that I'm from Zimbabwe, and I know how it is to get freedom and to always try to protect it. Thank you, Program Director, Mr. Fakude, Your Excellence, Dr. Naledi Pandor, the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation of the Republic of South Africa, Your Excellency, Mrs. Hanan Jara, Ambassador of the State of Palestine to South Africa, the Chief Executive Officer of the Freedom Park, Ms. Mafumadi, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is my pleasure to join you today in commemorating the United Nations International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. It is also fitting that we are holding this event at this hallowed venue, the Freedom Park. It is a reminder to all of us that indeed it is freedom for all the citizens of the world that we strive for. On behalf of the United Nations in South Africa, I'm honored to share with you the message from the United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres. And I quote, "We commemorate the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people at a time of diminished hope for peace. I am deeply saddened by the growing number of Palestinian civilians who have lost their lives in the spiral of violence engulfing the occupied West Bank. Each casualty fuels fear and yet more violence. I urge all parties to take immediate steps to reduce tensions and to break this deadly cycle. The long-standing drivers of conflict, including the ongoing occupation, settlement expansion, home demolitions and evictions, heighten anger, despair, and hopelessness. Meanwhile, Gaza continues to endure debilitating closures and humanitarian crises. I reiterate my call on the parties to engage, to end the closures of Gaza, and to improve the living conditions of all Palestinians. UNRWA remains a vital lifeline for Palestinian refugees. I commend the donors for their support and urge all to step up and provide predictable and sufficient funding to enable UNRWA to fully deliver on its mandate. The United Nations position is very clear. Peace must advance. The occupation must end. We are steadfast in our commitment to realize the vision of two states, Israel and Palestine, living side by side in peace and security, with Jerusalem as the capital of both states. Together, we reaffirm our support to the Palestinian people in their quest to achieve their inalienable rights and build a future of peace, justice, security, and dignity for all." End of quote. Thank you very much.
On that note, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to invite to the stage Her Excellency, Ambassador of the State of Palestine, Hanan Jarrah.
Well, the movie makes me nostalgic a lot. I have been 1.5 years away from Palestine. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, our program director. Thank you for joining us today. Your Excellency, Dr. Naledi Pandor, Minister of International Relations and Cooperation of the Republic of South Africa, and her family. Your Excellency, Mahshel Hamili, Dean of the Arab Ambassadors. Mrs. Jane Mafunda, CEO of the Freedom Park. Mr. Tambisa Fakodi, Program Director, and Mr. Masimba Tafiyanka, UN Information Office. Dignitaries and leadership present, colleagues, community, and friends of Palestine. Assalamu alaikum, Masa al khair. Good afternoon. I stand here with gratitude and appreciation to the nations that I am privileged to serve as a Palestinian ambassador: South Africa, Namibia, Lesotho, and Malawi. Since Tuesday, I have received powerful messages from these countries. Powerful message. Since Tuesday, I have been received powerful messages from these countries, and I have been fortunate to have attended and participated in several events commemorated the United Nations International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people, which is observed on November 29. It is not just these countries, but many other freedom-loving nations and peace-loving people from around the globe are showing the Palestinian people that their commitment to a free Palestine is strong and unwavering. This support, combined with the resilience and steadfastness of the Palestinian people back home in occupied Palestine and those in exile, is what keeps the flames of Palestinian liberation burning. The events that I participated in this week were hosted by organizations ranging from grassroots solidarity groups and young activists to high-level diplomats and government officials. It made me ask the question, what does international solidarity mean to us Palestinians? Real solidarity is a process of struggling together, of battling the structures and unequal systems that keep people oppressed. Mozambican freedom fighter and leader Samora Machel explained it the best. I quote, "International solidarity is not an act of charity. It is an act of unity between allies fighting on different terrains towards the same objectives." End of quote. Solidarity, then, is about developing relationships between oppressed peoples. And the reciprocal relationship between Palestinian and South African freedom fighters is an ideal example of the type of solidarity that Comrade Samora Machel referred to. Our veteran freedom fighters back home reminded us regularly that Palestinian and South African liberation movements trained side by side in Eastern Europe, the former Soviet Union, and in Africa. Some South African comrades were even with Palestine Liberation Organization in Beirut in 1982 when Israel invaded Lebanon. Our countries and peoples share an intimate history of struggle. 32 years ago, Nelson Mandela echoed Samora Machel's concept on solidarity shortly after his release from prison, when he outlined South Africa's unapologetic, unwavering solidarity with Palestine at a televised town hall meeting in New York. When apologists for the Israeli occupation state questioned why Madiba had met Abu Ammar, Comrade Yasser Arafat, 3 times, Madiba said, I quote, "Our attitude towards any country is determined by the attitude of that country to our struggle." Yasser Arafat and the PLO, Madiba explained, had supported South Africa's liberation struggle to the help by placing resources at the disposal of South Africans. We identify with the PLO because, just like ourselves, they are fighting for the right to self-determination, he stated. That, Madiba said, is our position. It is a position that guides both the people and government of democratic South Africa, including Minister Naledi Pandor. Minister Pandor has continued Madiba's legacy by acting on his words and has brought solidarity with Palestine into every portfolio and position she has held. In 2018, while speaking at an Israeli Apartheid Week event at the University of Cape Town, Minister Pandor, who was then Minister of Higher Education, called students to lobby for the issue of Palestine to be included on the agenda of the BRICS countries meeting, which was to be chaired by South Africa. The fact that Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, the 5 emerging nations which form BRICS, comprise 41% of the world's population, did not escape Minister Pandor. I quote, "Now that we have achieved our freedom, we must not forget our friends and allies who helped us liberate ourselves." End of quote. She warned students. Palestine, I must add, was indeed including on the BRICS agenda that year and in subsequent meetings thereafter. The issue of South Africa downgrading its embassy in Tel Aviv was one which Minister Pandor championed long before she became Minister of International Relations and Cooperation. She was among the first MPs to bring this issue up to the Parliament. As many of us know, being an activist is in Minister Pandor's genes, literally. And her own activism as a young student and academic in Botswana and England is well known and documented. So it is not necessary for me to go into these details. But what Minister Pandor has done is to take her beliefs, experience, energy, and passion as a grassroots activist into the UN Security Council and the African Union and speak truth to power in these chambers which have been heavily weighted against Palestinians at times. In the last few years, South Africa was an elected member of the UN Security Council and chair of the African Union. Each of these was a hefty duty, which plays on Pandor's shoulders a massive set of responsibilities. But she used these heavy responsibilities to give concreteness to South Africa's solidarity with Palestine. Minister Pandor did not miss the opportunity to use these positions to lobby for the UN to strengthen international law, pass critical resolutions, and craft new conversations around the Palestinian struggle. In October 2018, as South Africa entered its final week as President of the UN Security Council, Minister Pandor presided over the Council's query open debate on the Israeli occupation of Palestine. In a fiery address, she called out the UN's inaction and failure to hold Israel accountable. I quote, "The failure to end Israel's occupation of Palestine and secure Palestinian peace and freedom is a profound stain against the mission and objectives of the United Nations," she said. In the true spirit of solidarity, Minister Pandor called for a vigorous campaign of international solidarity, pressure, and support, similar to those that ultimately brought down the apartheid regime in South Africa. Our own struggles were advanced by United Nations actions and determination to end a crime against humanity. We need similar vigorous international solidarity, indignation, and commitment for Palestine, she boldly stated. Minister Bandor expressed grave concern at the continued disregard of Palestinian concerns on final status issues in the peace process, such as borders, the right of the refugees to return, the status of Jerusalem, water issues, Palestinian prisoners inside the Israeli prisons, and illegal settlements. Clearly, there is no intention to seek or achieve peace by those implementing these actions. How is it possible to believe in this council, in peace and security, in the face of such offending breaches of this council's decisions? Minister Pandor asked. Too few diplomats and leaders ask these questions at the UN and other multinational forums. At a time when some of our African leaders, whose own emerged from painful histories of colonialism and occupation, are being blinded by promises of Israeli aid, weapons, and spyware, Minister Pandor reminded her colleagues in Addis Ababa that as long as Israel continues its occupation, colonization, and apartheid against the Palestinian people, it cannot have a place at the African Union. Under Minister Bandor's leadership, South Africa was central in mobilizing opposition to the unilateral decision to grant Israel accreditation to the African Union. Minister Bandor's solidarity with Palestine is founded on the context of shared struggles, which Samora Machel and Nelson Mandela referred to. This solidarity is based on love of other oppressed people. Most importantly, however, is that Minister Bandor is not content with simply delivering statements and speeches on significant days, without concrete actions towards realizing the freedom of the Palestinian people. I quote, "We lose credibility as an institution when words are not accompanied by action," Minister Bandor warned the UN Security Council in 2018. Heeding her own warning, Minister Bandor has been central in recent discussions to reactivate legal instruments that were developed by the international community as a weapon in South Africa's struggle against apartheid, so that it might be able to address manifestations of apartheid in Palestine. She has also been central in helping us chart our way forward in determining how we, as Palestinian diplomats based in Africa, will put Palestine back on the agenda of countries on the continent. South Africa has not been shy since 1994 to challenge the way things are done on the global stage. Neither has Minister Naride Bandor. She has been courageous and forthright in calling out the selective application of international law, especially this year, to those guilty of doing so. Just as much as the people of Ukraine deserve their territory and freedom, the people of Palestine deserve their territory and freedom. Minister Bandor said at a joint press conference with US Secretary of State Antony Blinken in August. I quote, "We should be equally concerned at what is happening to the people of Palestine as we are with what is happening to the people of Ukraine. We've not seen an even-handed approach." Minister Bandor is the embodiment of true solidarity that goes beyond symbolic words and empty rhetoric. She is demonstrating the type of international solidarity that is needed as an activist, as a teacher, as a politician, as a diplomat, and above all, as a courageous woman. She serves as a role model, not just for me, but for all Palestinians. On behalf of President Mahmoud Abbas, President of the State of Palestine, and Chairman of the Executive Committee of the Palestine Liberation Organization, it gives me great honor to award Your Excellency, Minister Naledi Pantor, the Grand Star of the Order of Jerusalem, in recognition of your distinguished role in promoting the relations between Palestine and South Africa, and in appreciation of your efforts in supporting the Palestinian people and their just cause for freedom and independence.
has decided to award Her Excellency Dr. Naledi Pandor, Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Grand Star of the Order of Liberty, in recognition of her distinguished role in promoting the relations between Palestine and South Africa, and in appreciation of her effort in supporting the Palestinian people and their just cause for freedom and independence. From Allah. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. And Moloeni Dumelang, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And may I wish all my Muslim brothers and sisters a Juma Mubarak. Your Excellency, Ambassador Hannah Jaran, Your Excellency, Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, Ambassador Sali Omar Abdu, Your Excellency, Dean of the Council of Arab Ambassadors, Ambassador Mubarak Mahash Saeed Al-Hamli, Your Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps, officials of the South African government, members of Parliament present here, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor for me to address this very august gathering in commemoration of the 45th UN International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. I am also deeply humbled by the decision of His Excellency, President Mahmoud Abbas, to bestow on me the Grand Star of the Order of Jerusalem. It is beyond belief for me that I have been granted such an honor. I wish to also say it is an honor to my family as well. To my grandfather, Professor Z.K. Matthews, to my father and mother, Mr. Joe Matthews and Mama Fikile Matthews, to my husband Sharif, who is present here unusually, it's never with me. An honor for my daughter Fatima and my grandson Mohammed Uthman. We are here on this day because in 1977, we recall that the General Assembly of the United Nations called for the annual observation of 29 November as the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. On that day of 29 November, in 1947, the Assembly adopted the resolution on the partition of Palestine. Question of Palestine remains unresolved after 70 years. Despite flare-ups in various hotspots in the region, the Palestinian question, we believe, remains at the heart of the tensions in the Middle East. Until the people of Palestine are free, the Middle East is not going to have peace. The freedom of the people of Palestine is intrinsically linked to the peace of the region of the Middle East. And this is something that the world must understand, accept, and ensure we work toward. You will all remember the report of the new UN Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the occupied Palestinian territory, which was issued on the 7th of June this year. It indicated that the continued occupation by Israel of Palestinian territory and discrimination against Palestinians are the key root causes of the recurrent tensions, instability, and the protraction of conflict in that region. What a lasting peace requires is restoration of all legitimate rights of the Palestinian people, in line with the principles of international human rights and international humanitarian law. We as South Africa continue to support the pursuit of a two-state solution to bring peace and security to the region and to the people of both countries. I know that I often speak of Palestine and I'm accused of being anti-Israel. So I want to make it clear, the policy of South Africa is a two-state solution. We assert Palestine specifically because it is the people of Palestine who are denied fundamental human rights. The Palestinian struggle, as others have said, invokes memories of our own anti-apartheid struggle against racial segregation and oppression. Since we attained freedom in 1994, our position on Palestine has been clear, consistent, and convergent with the broader international community. We will continue as South Africa to support the achievement of a two-state solution with a viable, contiguous Palestinian state, not Abraham Accords, existing side by side with Israel, within the internationally recognized 1967 borders, with East Jerusalem as the capital of a free Palestine. This is in line with all known UN resolutions and is clearly in line with international law. A viable and sustainable peace for the Middle East has to ensure Palestinian sovereignty, Palestinian territorial integrity, and its economic viability, with sovereign equality between Palestine and Israel. These are the basics, which will mean we have freedom at last. We mustn't, as occupants of this world, disregard the rights of the people of Palestine. We cannot allow this injustice to continue. We mustn't allow the circumvention of final status issues, such as borders, the question of the status of Jerusalem, the matter of the release of political prisoners, and of course, the right of return of refugees. We have noted the growing number of human rights reports from reputable human rights organizations such as Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, the UN Human Rights Council, and even Israeli non-governmental organizations such as B'Tselem, which have all marked Israel as guilty of gross human rights abuses toward Palestinians. The Amnesty International investigation details how Israel enforces a system of oppression and domination against the Palestinian people, wherever it has control over their rights. This includes Palestinians living in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories, as well as displaced refugees in other countries. This very comprehensive report sets out how massive seizures of Palestinian land and property, unlawful killings, forcible transfer, drastic movement restrictions, and the denial of nationality and citizenship to Palestinians are all components of a system which is akin to apartheid under international law. This system is maintained by violations which Amnesty International found to constitute apartheid as a crime against humanity, as defined in the Rome Statute and the Apartheid Convention of the United Nations. In international criminal law, specific unlawful acts which are committed within a system of oppression and domination with the intention of maintaining that system constitute the crime against humanity of apartheid. This is how the convention defines that crime. All of these acts are set out in the UN Convention and in the Rome Statute. They include aspects which are familiar to us as South Africans: unlawful killing, torture, forcible transfer, denial of basic rights and freedoms. This is why the apartheid definition has been articulated, because as residents of Soweto or Khayelitsha, we're familiar with all of this. We all experienced it. The UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the Palestinian territory, Michael Link, has called on the international community to accept and adopt the findings in his current report. His report echoes recent findings by Palestinian, Israeli, and international human rights organizations. All of them are joined in conclusion on this apartheid characteristic. So we, as the international community, and I'm so pleased that so many their excellencies are here, because I hope they will convey this message that all of us have an obligation to act. All of us must act. If the world acts as one, we will effect a change. There can be no justification for a built around the institutionalized and prolonged oppression of millions of people. We worry greatly at the South African government that successive Israeli governments have considered Palestinians as a demographic threat and have imposed measures to control and decrease their presence and access to land in Israel and in the occupied Palestinian territories. These demographic aims are really plans to make the territory of the Palestinian people fully Israeli land. In the West Bank and Gaza, where Israel has controlled the population registry since 1967, Palestinians have no citizenship, and most are considered stateless, requiring ID cards, passport, from the Israeli military to live and work in the territories. I remember Dr. Frini Jinwala telling me of her visit to Palestine and how at almost every point you are stopped and asked to identify yourself. It's exactly what we used to experience here. They have blocked Palestinians from leasing land on 80% of what Israel calls its state land. And this is a result of land seizures, such as we had with the Bantustan areas. And there's a web of discriminatory laws on land allocation, on planning for use of land, and of zoning of land. Since the mid-1990s, authorities in Israel have imposed increasingly stringent movement restrictions on Palestinians in the occupied territories. There are military checkpoints, roadblocks, fences, and other structures which control the movement of Palestinians and restrict their travel into Israel and even abroad. The wall and a 700-kilometer fence, which Israel is continuing to extend, have isolated communities inside essentially military zones, and they have to obtain multiple special permits at any time they wish to enter or leave their homes. This is just terrible. The unconscionable practice of home demolitions as a form of collective punishment continues. We join a growing chorus of voices calling for an end to the brutal practice of home demolitions and forced evictions. As I say this, we are not anti-Semitic. We are not discriminatory or racist toward people of Jewish origin. But we cannot accept the oppression of Palestinian people. And that is all we are saying. The continued pronouncements about annexation of large parts of the West Bank and the building of additional settlements also undermine the prospects of peace and are again glaring violations of international law. Israel has just caused thousands of Palestinians to have no place to stay, no room to live. I'd like to remind us of the unanimous adoption of the Security Council Resolution 2334 on December 23, 2016, which stated the following, and I quote, reaffirms that the establishment by Israel of settlements in the Palestinian territory occupied since 1967, including East Jerusalem, has no legal validity and constitutes a flagrant violation under international law and a major obstacle to the achievement of the two-state solution and a just, lasting, and comprehensive peace. Of course, we all know that no member state is exempt from their obligations under the UN Charter. If we abandon principles enshrined in the Charter, it causes the Security Council and its decisions to become obsolete, which is why we are very concerned at the state of the Security Council today. This year marks 15 years since the closure of the Gaza Strip, which has deprived its more than 2 million residents of opportunities to better their lives. It has devastated the economy in Gaza and contributed to further fragmentation of the Palestinian people. I know how these attempts to fragment people never work. When they try to divide you, you become stronger in solidarity. And this is what we must encourage people of Palestine. Part of our responsibility as the international community is to provide material and practical support to the people of Palestine who find themselves in such difficult circumstances. We've seen terrible violence in the past few months carried out by the Israel Defense Force on young people and even on journalists. You can imagine if soldiers in South Africa shot a journalist, there would be a global uproar. But in Israel, you can get away with it. This is shocking. Al Jazeera journalist Shireen Abu Akleh's assassination was just one in a long string of shootings and killings that have been carried out with impunity. The world was shocked by her assassination on the 11th of May, and of course we were absolutely disgusted at the subsequent attacks on mourners and pallbearers at her funeral. Media outlets that have carried out careful investigations indicate that her killing was targeted and not accidental. We've continued to raise our voice that justice needs to be served, not only for Shireen, but for many others who suffered a similar fate, and for women who are abused and killed everywhere in the world. We welcome the decision of the International Criminal Court pre-trial chamber last year that Palestine has finally acceded to the Rome Statute and has become a state party to it, and that the ICC's territorial jurisdiction extends to the territories occupied by Israel since 1967, namely Gaza and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. The ruling is, we believe, a first step toward breaking the cycle of impunity for crimes under international law committed by all parties to the conflict. Israel's security and that of its future generations does not lie in the annexation of all Palestinian territories, does not lie in the imprisonment of Palestinians, does not lie in erecting high concrete walls and checkpoints, nor does it lie in the continued blockade of Gaza. Israel's security and future lies in a peaceful and stable neighbor, in a sovereign and independent Palestinian state, whose children, like Israeli children, can go to school, can play, can attend places of worship, and compete in sporting activities in peace and security. As our former president, President Mandela, said at a banquet in Cape Town for visiting President Yasser Arafat in 1998, and I quote, Our own humble experience has shown that negotiated solutions can be found even to conflicts that the world has come to regard as insoluble. It has taught us that such solutions emerge when former opponents reach out to find common ground. As South Africans, we believe that as intractable and terrible as this conflict may seem, peace is possible. We share a similar belief with respect to Ukraine and Russia. If all sides are prepared to find solutions to the thorny final status issues and engage in honest mediation without outside interference, both Israelis and Palestinians can live in two viable independent states in security and prosperity. None of us can give up on seeking this conclusion. And until it is accomplished, the region will continue to be mired in instability and conflict. As I receive this award, I promise that we as South Africa, and particularly the department that I have the honor to lead, we will continue to be advocates for the peace, the freedom, the stability, and the recognition of the humanity of the people of Palestine. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister Pando, and thanks very much for those kind words. And thank you for being you. We thank not only Comrade Joe Matthews for sharing you with us. We also thank your family also for sharing you with us. Before we close, I just want to say a few things. And I'm also tempted to say, Malibongwe, Amanda, Amanda. Thank you. I'm not supposed to say that, I'm a journalist. You know, I knew and worked with Shireen Abu Akleh for a very long time, and your words are so moving. And for me, again, coming from the fraternity I come from, we thank you for that understanding and for that contribution and kind words and, you know, the reminder of the role that journalists play around the world. The other thing which I think is important and it has to be mentioned without making some people shy is that the struggle of the Palestinian people has been highlighted and amplified at the moment in Qatar, in the World Cup. And I think the state of Qatar deserves a lot of appreciation. Not only did they manage to bring the Palestinians from Palestine into Qatar and Doha to observe the World Cup, you know, they've also facilitated them to enjoy that World Cup. So without getting too political, I think, and of course, I'm not singing for my supper, but it's an important step and a very brave step that outside South Africa, a country of great solidarity like us, we also have Arabs who are also taking a firm position in support of the Palestinian struggle. So with those words, I will close, Your Excellency, and invite all of you to partake the refreshments outside, and I was empowered to invite you to come and eat with us. So thank you very much and thanks for coming.